My name is Isabel Peterson, excuse me, and I work for a company called Milltown Partners, which I will tell you a little bit more about. And I am responsible for everything to do with recruitment, like some quite a lot of talent operations, bits and pieces. So hopefully what I will be saying is kind of useful because I literally see hundreds of applications a week at every level, from entry level to senior, and know a bit about the industry. Fingers crossed, it's my 10-year anniversary this week, which is a bit crazy. So if you could go to the next one, please.
Yes. Oh, white.
Oh, okay. Well, funky transition. Okay, so this is me in that rather like strange corporate headshot, but this is a brief overview of my career. And I think the main thing that I wanted to show you is that yes, I had university education, which I will say, which is a whole other topic, you don't all need to get into communications or marketing or PR, if any of you are questioning that. I had university education and joined Milltown 10 years ago, kind of through a little bit of good fortune, and we were less than 20 people. So it was a bit of a like, here's an opportunity to do a bit of kind of work experience, try and do my kind of as much as I possibly can and impress them. And then they offered me a job. Sadly, that is not how we now hire. It is much more formal now. I'm in charge. I would not have got in. I wouldn't say at this point. And then after a few years, I was questioning, was PR and comms for me? And they suggested, my leadership, that I could take on recruitment, and then have kind of grown up through there. So I guess the main thing, the point that I want to convey is like, a lot of my work and a lot of my friends' work, I'm now in my early 30s, has been through finding or hearing about those little opportunities and being as proactive as possible. Like, a lot of the language around people your age is, it's really hard to get a job and things are really tough and it's really, really hard to get a salary. And I wish I could be like, I've got the magic sauce to disagree with that sentiment. It is really tough and it is really competitive, and you'll have your own nervousness, your own ideas, your own ambition, and all of that. But like, just being organized, proactive, finding those people on LinkedIn that you can reach out to, going to events like this, like doing as much of that as possible is often what has opened doors for me. I mean, May emailed me and I replied, and now we're in touch and now we know each other. Like, saying yes to things, I think, is a really great starting point in any career. And honestly, a lot of hard work, yes, and but good luck and good timing and building good relationships has carried me through.
I
Next
completely
slide,
agree,
please.
by the way, as well. And
Yeah.
also like LinkedIn now it's so hard to get even your DM across
Yes.
LinkedIn. So I would say just be authentic,
Yeah.
don't come across generic. And I think
Yeah.
that's how, we really wanted Isabel to speak at our event, but we didn't know Isabel. So but we just had a very kind of friendly message, and
Yeah.
it did come through. So now we're
Yeah.
here.
Definitely. Um, okay, so corporate communications, which is what Milltown does and what I have done for the first few years of my career. And I mean, this is a form of communications about, about Milltown. This is a branding moment. Basically, the whole purpose of why companies pay an external advisor, which is the corporate communications advisor, why would they not just do that themselves? Well, it's about how can they bring in more opinions, more expertise, more perspective, and think about their reputation. When people say communications, it's a little bit confusing because there's obviously capital C communications, which is the corporate money earning advice piece, which is what Milltown does. And then there's literally what I'm doing now, which is I am verbally communicating to you. And it is important, like, if you're interested in the world of communications, it is more than talking and writing. It is about reputation and how are we as advisors, how are companies telling the story that they need to be telling in order to generate more income, in order to launch new products, in order to understand the different regulations that face their industry, in order to break into new markets across the UK or beyond. It's about making sure that organizations are really understood and trusted by the people who matter most. And each company will have different groups of people who matter the most to them, from consumers to investors to competitors to government and policymakers to journalists who tell their stories in the most kind of public fashion, to employees. If we take an example like a company like a Tesco's, for instance, like one of the biggest corporate names you can think of in the UK, their employees are thousands of people who can have real influence on their corporate reputation. And so it's about understanding all of these different pockets. What is the story? What is the kind of storytelling that makes that company understood in the most valuable way? And then crucially, how can they live up to that? Now, communications advisors, we are not the CEOs of companies. We cannot say to them, oh, if you could actually just put your money here or there, or if you could actually launch this product, that would be really great. That is for them to be doing. We are helping them do it in the best way possible. An interesting thing, I think, a misconception perhaps about corporate communications, which is kind of interesting, is it's not all about hiding shady dealings. It's not all about clearing up a crisis. It's not all about kind of fudging something that maybe is ethically questionable. I would say that if you're working for a company that only does those things, that's a choice, but maybe like ethically, maybe might not be the most comfortable. Hopefully, a company like Milltown and most of our peers, competitors aren't doing any of that stuff. They're saying, you've got Tesco's, like, how are you the most interesting, popular kind of ethical supermarket, and how do we make sure that everyone knows that you're the place to go to? It is not about shady dealing. So those can, like, a bit of a crisis can be pretty fun. A Sunday morning, BBC breaking story is kind of interesting and pretty cool, but it's not a lot of the day to day is the kind of ground up communication.
Positive
Exactly.
reputation. So does
Exactly.
every large company have corporate communications?
Yes, every single company, not just kind of corporate private sector companies, but think of every university, public institutions, arts institutions, charities, individuals, famous individuals. An obvious example is every major MP or front, cabinet minister will have a head of communications, but so do CEOs. Sports teams have lots and lots of comms advice and professionals internally. So every single anything will have a communications person. It could be one or it could be a team of 10. And then there are lots of agencies, which is the phrase to describe Milltown, who are external. And I'll explain the difference, I think, in a couple of slides' time. But who are hired as extra brains, extra resource, extra help to advise on these comms moments.
I love how you describe reputation communications. I think that's a really good link.
Yes. Well, I'm glad. Hopefully it makes sense. Okay, so these are three related but separate industries, basically. And any of you listening could go into any of them because a lot of the same skills, especially at entry level, a lot of them share the same skills at the entry level status. So corporate communications is kind of, as I've already touched on, it's internal and external communications, storytelling, thinking about a range of different audiences and a range of different channels. And channels is a very common word in the industry about the different methods. So your LinkedIn is one channel. Your newspaper relationship with journalists is another channel. Your event that you're hosting is another channel. Corporate comms kind of encapsulates it all. It's often very tied to business objectives and to the long-term kind of reputation of a firm. Public relations is more about the external audience. So a little bit more about what do consumers, people who have really nothing to do with the business but are maybe interested, people who are potential buyers, potential investors. It's more external facing. And then marketing is much more about the physical, or in today's world, I guess, online products and services and tools. So marketing is much more about, like, how are we paying to do something, a really cool creative campaign that can get in front of people where there's more of a direct monetary return. So it will often need to tie into the overall reputation, but it's much more like, what are you and I, when I was on Instagram when I woke up, obviously, what was I seeing? What cool campaigns was I seeing on that? That's more of a marketing angle rather than the PR or comms.
Love it. Got it.
It's nuanced. Okay, another difference to explain, and again, this applies to comms, to PR, to marketing, is agency or in-house, which I've kind of touched on there. So agency, which is what my company, Milltown Partners, is, we are an organization where we have people from entry level to 20, 30 plus years of experience, where we advise lots of different companies and organizations. So typically, any one of our staff is advising in any given week, kind of 4 clients at a time. Those clients could have worked with us for years and years and years, or we could be working with them for a very structured 3-month period about a particular moment in time or a particular project that they want advice on. And you can therefore, I think a really cool thing about working in agency is that you get to, especially at the junior level, work on a ton of different industries and sectors, and you can kind of start figuring out what you like. I was talking to some of the junior people who I've hired over the past like 2 or 3 years at Milltown, and now they're 2 or 3 years in. I was asking them ahead of this, like, what are you still enjoying? And all of them are starting to say, well, I actually really love the kind of techie clients that we have. Someone is really into the sports clients that we have. Someone is really enjoying the kind of policy and government relations work that we're doing. And they can do all of that at Milltown, but they are also thinking about their career as they look forward of like, actually, one day, do I want to start trying to be more and more specialist and go down one route a bit more? So I think there's a real, I'm biased, I work in an agency, but I think there's a real advantage to going to a PR, marketing, comms, research, advertising agency, and then starting to get your feel of things. In-house, you tend to you're working for one company. If let's take the Tesco's example again, you're in the Tesco's comms and PR or marketing, but comms team, and you become a real expert. So the advantage of that is that you can develop a real set of expertise in the industry that you have chosen. You know exactly how that industry works. You know exactly the media, the kind of different audiences that are most relevant. And that is also an amazing foundation because you can then be the voice as you build your career. And so that to me feels like if you are already really clearly passionate and maybe have a bit of work experience in an industry and you're like, I actually just want to go all in-house is probably the way to go. And then in-house people hire agencies to give them that extra bit of resource, that extra thinking, collaboration, and external perspective. Because, as I said, if you're in-house, you tend to need to be the experts, and you've got a lot more pressures coming from the CEO, the leadership, the investors. They don't always have as much time as they might want to be thinking, okay, how do we compare what our 5 competitors are doing and try and do something cooler? And that's where an agency can come in.
Got it. No, that's a really good distinguish. And we had another guest who works in digital marketing, and he said the same thing. I think agency is a good place to start.
Yeah.
So that you can get all of that different.
A really good foundation, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, so Milltown specifically, we do, as I've said there, we advise all different kinds of companies. So just to give you the overview, we are now 12 years old. We were founded in London, where we have about 95-ish people. I've literally had a joiner next week and someone leaving last week, so the maths is kind of evening out. About 95-ish people in London. We have 5 people in Brussels. We then have about 30 people in New York and about 30 people in San Francisco. So we were founded in London and then we opened up in the States in 2018, opened up in Brussels in 2023. And we've grown ever since. So we were started by 2 men who are both brilliant leaders, practitioners, the best of the best have public profiles. You can go on our website and very quickly figure out who they are and dig into their fascinating stories. And both of them came together. They had a lot of experience in journalism, in government work and technology companies. One had been in-house at Google, one had worked at Manchester United, and then he'd also worked with the royal family. And so we had this quite unusual mix of like sport, public figures, and technology. And then that is kind of the basis of our client base today, even though we are now 170-ish people and we have like, I tried to figure out how many clients. I couldn't because the spreadsheet was kind of something that I don't need to spend any time in, but there are a lot of clients. So I just thought I'd try and illustrate with 3 case studies. So one example of our work, sports, we worked with, and I would say I'm not a football fan, so I don't actually know if they're doing any good in the league, but they're probably the top 5 famous brands in the world, I would say. And I'm being discreet because we tend not to name our clients publicly, but do some Googling after this and you'll figure out exactly who it is. And a new owner was coming in with a large stake. And so we were hired by him and the football club as a collaboration to launch that news, which was, of course, there was a degree of controversy. Fans are a massive audience in this, local government, media, commentators, the players, the other owners. And so that was a really cool, very high stakes, very confidential, because anything to do with finances, investment, acquisitions has to be really under wraps. So not even everyone in Milltown knew that we were working on this until the launch day because there are legal constraints. So that's a kind of really cool example where you were thinking about the personal profile of this CEO as well as the reputation of the club.
And
fintech,
are you coming up with the like stories that the media will then say?
Yeah, I mean, there's the factual evidence that you have to just convey clearly. X owner is taking on this amount of stake in the business for this amount of money, and this is his plan. So there are some essential facts that really are the most crucial thing to get across. You want those to be accurately understood and conveyed. And then you have the, I guess, like emotional storytelling of why is this important to this man? Why is this going to be a good thing for the club? Why is this going to have a long-term positive impact on the success of the team and of the kind of its many kind of large global brand? And so you've got the facts, and then you've got the like, how do we make that interesting?
The emotional element.
And then you've kind of got to handle the questions that come your way, which not all of them are going to be friendly. So you've got to think, what are the ways that external journalists or commentators or online discussions could be poking holes, and have we got really clear answers? And it's not, I think, crucially in corporate comms, it's not about just saying, oh goodness, like that group of people are just being really loud and really cross. Don't give in. It's like it's always coming back to what is the core story that we are telling, but how do we explain it in a way that is persuasive, that is engaging, and that can hopefully challenge some of that crossness. And then just accepting we live in an internet world. There are just cross people everywhere. So you've then kind of got to move past them.
Okay, yes, so got it. You're like the middleman between
exactly
your client and then like the journalists and
exactly. And the external world. I'm conscious of time.
Yes, I know. We've only got, oh gosh, okay.
I know. So what I'm thinking, I don't know, do you share these slides?
Yes, we can do. We can do.
Perfect. Because then we could something I thought would be interesting if we skip on to the next one. So entry level, let's stick on this one. Yeah, we'll share the slides. I think if you're wondering, is comms interesting for me? You want to be curious. You've got to be energetic and like proactive. Some of those points I mentioned earlier, like be really curious, be really proactive, understand, keep up with, I mean, yes, the news, but it depends what type of comms. But we don't work with politicians or governments or kind of political parties. And so when I say keep up with the news, like if you say you're interested in, let's come back to the world of sport, are you actually not just interested because you know what teams are at the top of the league, but in the business pages every single day, every single week, there are sports stories, because sports is a massive multi-million, probably billion industry, right? So there's a lot of interesting things going on there. So I think get into the weeds of what is being said across newspapers, across podcasts, a great source of information, which is free as well. LinkedIn, set yourself up a profile and just be familiar with the business kind of topical stories of the day. You really care about storytelling and you've got a bit of a creative streak. You're not going to be like, I used actually AI to help with these logos, which is a whole other use AI thing. But you're not just going to be drawing things, but you've got to be and kind of creating images. But you have a storytelling instinct. You like the media. You like the kind of opportunity to craft something, and it's all teamwork as well. So again, if you want to be learning from others, working with a whole range of different personalities of people who have come from different careers, it's a really, really good starting point. But it's fast paced. So again, if you're looking for something that is maybe a little bit more structured, a little bit more 9 to 5 in the traditional sense, a little bit more routine, like just check that, because I think there's so like that it might not be the place for you. But if you're actually like, you know what, 9 till 6 every day, I'm going to be working on different projects all the time. I think that's a really kind of cool place to be
Multitasking,
starting. And
yeah.
there's so many resources online to tell you about a bit more about it as well. I also did put a slide in here, just slide 10, which was all about AI, because I thought that, oh, sorry, slide 9, I was wrong. I think that I wanted to make this point because, like, as a final one, don't worry or freak out about AI. In my view, in my company's view, in the industry's view of comms, it is here to stay. So if you accept that as a baseline, it's then about how are you using it in a really exciting and cutting edge fashion. And there are so many advantages to it that you will, as you look for jobs, be doing anyway. You will spend less time on mechanical tasks. You will do the repeatable things much more quickly. You'll be able to work through large amounts of data and be better informed more quickly. So where you need to bring your human piece is that judgment, is the critical thinking, is the relationship building, is the creativity. And I think not putting too much in one or the other, but actually starting already, whether you're at college or at university or in a work experience job, of like, how are you playing around with some of these tools to feel comfortable and familiar, and then bringing that into interviews and bringing that into your first entry level jobs or second junior positions is going to be really important. And like, we look for it now, we say it in our job descriptions, we say it in our scenario test rounds, that we want people to use it, but they have to be able to kind of explain it and use their own critical judgment. I mean, every image in this presentation, last night I was using Gemini and playing around with it and getting them to create things that try to illustrate the slides. And like, that's it. It didn't make, I didn't do it in 5 minutes. It took quite a bit of time, but it was like a really cool experiment of getting the color codes. And I think seeing it as a kind of add-on rather than a kind of major, too scary a thing is going to be crucial as you will go into your careers.
I think your last point here is really important. Judgment and critical
Yeah,
thinking is still so essential. And I think
yeah,
that's the worry with AI, is that
yeah,
sometimes people rely on AI to do that critical thinking.
yeah,
But what you're saying is, if you use AI as a tool to,
yeah,
support you, make you more efficient, that is
yeah,
amazing. But
definitely.
don't like let AI, come up with answers or opinions.
No. And I think just to illustrate it, like, if, maybe some of you are preparing for interviews at the moment, an example, we've had this with candidates. So a really strong candidate in an interview, when they're discussing a piece of research that they've done at university or in work experience or in life in preparation for the interview, will say like, my Google search came back with XYZ. I also used ChatGPT to play around with some ideas, and this is what I learned. But I noticed that this wasn't quite right. So then I went back to my desk research and I combined it all. And actually, what ChatGPT helped me with was X, and what my own work and desk search and writing and editing helped me with was Y. Candidates who, that's a really strong answer. Candidates, and we have unfortunately had this, who, when we say, oh, it looks like you used AI in your written response here, and they kind of say, oh, yeah. And then we say, cool, great. We use AI every day at work. Like, can you tell me how you used it? Or can you tell me how you chose what bits to include from your AI use versus, and then discard the other bits? And they can't come up with an answer. And that's the point on the critical thinking and the judgment. You will let yourself down if, as you say, May, like you're kind of using it to come up with the answers and then you're not stress testing them, or you're not poking holes in them, or you're not proofreading them. I mean, yeah, on this presentation, like I was playing around with it and I was putting in content. I went back, like it's a number of hours of going back and forth and editing and refining. And some stuff it said was just wrong. Like it was just wrong. I took that out and then I kept it and I was like, oh, but that's an interesting point. And then you edit it like a brainstorming partner, I think, rather than
Yeah, I like
something
that
who's
part.
just copying and pasting, because interviewers will catch that immediately.
Oh, amazing. Well, I know that people have already asked for the slides, so we'll
Yeah.
definitely share the slides after. You can obviously connect with Isabel
Yeah. My
on
details are
LinkedIn.
at the bottom. Yeah.
I also was thinking, like, as a bit of like a actionable takeaway,
Yeah.
as I was thinking, I wonder whether people could go away and have a look at someone in the news now, someone famous like Stephen
Yeah.
Bott or someone like that,
Yeah.
and try and see if you can work out what their
Yes.
corporate communications is. Like, what's the
Yes.
narrative and the storytelling that Stephen Bartlett's team
Yes.
is trying to portray? Is it
Yeah.
his, whatever it is, his
Yeah,
messaging?
that's
And
a
I wonder,
really, really, really cool idea and is so typical of what comms agencies do. A new client will walk through the door, and the first thing we do is do a deep dive on, or they say we want an introductory conversation. So, how do we prepare? It's doing exactly what you said in that little bit of homework, which is like you go deep into what are they putting out there themselves, which they are managing and owning, and then what are other people talking about, and then are there any tensions, are there any gaps in that, and that's kind of honing in. Every single CEO you ever see interviewed on a podcast, in a newspaper, on a Substack newsletter, that has been organized. That is not organic, kind of out of the thin air.
yeah.
That has been organized between the individual, the media source, and their communications people. And so you might read an interview and think, goodness, that was shocking. I learned nothing. They handled all the hard questions badly. Well, that suggests that they need better training in how to do that. But to set it up in the first place, that was organized. And so, yeah, doing your own analysis of thinking, God, that person is really powerful at their own storytelling, or that person is really not, um, is a good exercise.
And then you could bring that into an interview and that will look really
Definitely.
impressive. So yeah, okay. Well,
Definitely.
that's a good thing that you guys can do. But thank you so much, Isabel.
My
This has
pleasure.
honestly been fascinating. We haven't even gone through all the slides, but
I know.
yeah, I feel like people were really engaged in that one. And I will put your LinkedIn in the chat as well, just so
Yeah,
people have
put
that.
it all up there. I am here to message. Things, as May knows, gets a little bit lost in my inbox sometimes. So my own LinkedIn, just hammer. I will never get bored of being chased. So if you get in touch once and I don't reply for a couple of weeks, don't give up, which is a general tip anyway, but just don't give up and I will be happy to talk to you.
Oh, amazing. Thank you so much, Isabel. I will let you
Thanks
go.
so much,
I'm
May.
gonna
Have a
find
great
your
day.
LinkedIn right now.
Bye now.
Bye.